Hello, and welcome to California Death Row, where we're talking about it. Everything that we say is a matter of public record that you can find on the internet. Just simply Google their name and you can find it. There are 727 condemned inmates in California Death Row. What's unique about Death Row is that they have automatic appeals and they are automatically assigned an attorney to go through this appeal process. Unlike a normal conviction, say it's robbery, where they would have to go hire someone else to appeal their case after their first appeal that technically has to be heard. Today, we're going to be talking about the dating game killer. So, the dating game killer, his name is Rodney Alcala. He was sentenced on August 20th, 1986. Since then, he has appealed his case through those automatic appeals, and it has been overturned. As of right now, his case is still considered reversed, and the issue is whether or not the 5 murders that he allegedly did can all be tried at the same trial or to sever the trials because they were done at 2 separate counties, Orange County and Los Angeles County. He was 36 at the time of this offense, and he was received, as in was sent to prison, on June 25th, 1980. So we're going to talk about Robin Samsoe. On June 20th, 1979, Robin spent the afternoon with her friend Bridget in Huntington Beach. She was 12 years old, and Bridget was roughly the same age. At the beach, a man approached them asking to take their picture for a school contest. So the girls agreed and they started taking pictures. They were interrupted when Bridget's neighbor, Jacqueline, approached them due to the suspicious attention this man was giving the young girls. The man hurriedly left, and he was later identified as Rodney Alcala. So Robin and Bridget, after this was interrupted, they went home to Bridget's house or apartment, and that's where Robin took Bridget's bike so she could attend her ballet class. However, Robin was never seen again. Later the same day that Robin disappeared, this woman named Dana Croppa, who worked at the U.S. Forestry Service as a seasonal worker, was stationed at Chauncey Hills, and she came across a Datsun F10 parked on a turnout. There was a dark-haired man forcibly steering a blonde-haired young lady towards a dry steam bed. Dana thought it was weird, but she didn't do anything about the incident. She didn't report it. She didn't tell anyone. The next day, Dana passed the same area and saw the same car from the original site that was parked there. A man was leaning against a nearby area, and he appeared to have dirt or stains all down the front of him. Dana felt something was wrong about the situation, but again, she did nothing about it. She didn't report it. She didn't tell anyone. About 5 days later, after the original sighting, Dana returned to the site to satisfy her curiosity. She discovered a mutilated body of a young girl whose head had been partially severed from the body and whose hands and feet had been severed. Feeling guilt over not having reported the original incident 5 days earlier, Dana did not report or reveal it to anyone what she just discovered. On July 2nd, 1979, a colleague of Dana's discovered some bones and reported it to the authorities. The cause of death and sexual assault could not be determined due to the wild animals disrupting the remains. Now, wild animals, when they're small, they usually like to take the smaller bones first, like the phalanges of your fingers or your toes, because they're easy to carry. The skull was completely separated from the spine and the front teeth were smashed in. A cane-cut kitchen knife was found near the main portion of the remains. Less than a mile away, Robin's beach towel had been discovered with blood on it, consistent with that drawn from the bone marrow of the remains. Robin's personalized tennis shoe was found, and it was the sole piece of clothing retrieved. So the tennis shoe and the beach towel belonged to Robin. Those were the only items of hers that were still left at that scene. In the interim, Bridget, who is Robin's friend, assisted a police composite artist in drawing up a sketch of the man who took the girls' pictures. The sketch was distributed on June 22nd. Rodney's parole officer saw the sketch and felt it was a match to him. But his parole officer knew that Rodney had a sexual interest in young girls and his familiarity with the area in which the remains were found. A search warrant was served on the home of Rodney, which he shared with his mother in Monterey Park. Police seized a Datsun F10 that was registered to Rodney. Inside the Datsun, they found camera equipment and a briefcase containing a set of keys. Now, that briefcase with set of keys is important. A set of cane-cut kitchen knives were also retrieved. The police noticed, but they failed to seize a receipt for a storage locker in Seattle, Washington. However, they did receive a search warrant to search that storage locker despite not seizing that receipt. The keys from the briefcase opened up both the locks on the storage locker. There were slides of Lorraine Wirtz at the beach the same day Robin had disappeared. There were several items of jewelry, and one of them was a pair of gold ball earrings that were often worn by Robin, and her mother identified them based on a modification made by nail clippers. They did a striation test with those nail clippers in a test, and they were consistent. So that's how prosecutors were able to say that these gold ball earrings belonged to Robin, and Rodney Alcala took them from her. So that's how they're linking Robin and Rodney together. Elizabeth Kelleher is Rodney's girlfriend, and she testified that she saw Rodney on June 22nd. At the time, he was sporting his usual long curly hair. After the composite sketch was exhibited throughout the area, Rodney has straightened his hair using a chemical solution, and then by June 26th, he had cut his hair. So he's trying to kind of change his image in a way to say that that picture is not him. On July 8th, he informed Elizabeth, his girlfriend, he was going to move to from Southern California to Texas to start a photography business. On July 11th, Rodney went to Seattle, not Texas, and that is when he obtained the storage locker. Rodney returned to Monterey Park, which is where he lived with his mother, and informed Elizabeth that he was going to permanently move to Texas on July 24th. However, he told Leslie Schneider, a friend of his, he was leaving for Chicago. At trial, Rodney did not testify, so he relied on witnesses for an alibi defense. Various witnesses testified he applied for a photographer position at Knott's Berry Farm on June 20th. This was disputed by Knott's Berry Farm. At trial, he had a defense witness testify that the striations on the gold earrings were consistent with having been made with nail clippers provided by Rodney's mother. So they're trying to show that their nail clippers actually made the striations and not Robin's mother. Rodney had a friend testify that she saw Rodney wearing those gold ball earrings, although it was later contradicted by another friend. A jail inmate who got to know Rodney, I believe it was before the first trial, and Rodney had told this jail inmate that Robin had screamed, scratched, and yelled during the ordeal, and Rodney then supposedly described Robin's body in various salacious terms. So this is used as evidence against Rodney that he actually did kill Robin. So now we're going to move on to the 4 Los Angeles murders, and the first one is Jill Barcomb. This information for the Los Angeles murders were told to an Orange County grand jury, and they issued an indictment. So this is where the issue comes of wanting to separate the Los Angeles murders from Robin because they were done in different counties, and if they do that, they're going to argue to not have Rodney be on death row. Because otherwise, if you put it all together, now you have these special circumstances, and that's how you have a penalty phase and then well, you have the guilt phase, the penalty phase, and then sentencing. So that's what's different about death penalty cases, is that essentially it's kind of two trials. And at the penalty phase, that is where they have more of the victim impact statements testify on how their family has been affected by their loved one being killed. So in July 1977, the body of Jill Barcomb was found in a remote dirt road, and she was essentially nude. She had been badly beaten about the head and face with a substantial sized rock lying nearby. The pointed side of that rock was covered with blood. Her upper body had been crushed and her front teeth had been fractured. Jill had a bloody bite mark on the nipple of her right breast. She had serious anal injuries with visible bleeding from the anus. She had been strangled in 3 different ways: with a buckled belt, with a high knee hose, and one of the legs of the pants she had previously been wearing. Jill was considered a tiny girl. She was about 5 feet tall and weighed about 95 pounds. So that's pretty small. Swabs were taken from her genital region and they were preserved. Due to the development of DNA typing technique, they were able to utilize those swabs that were taken from Jill, and they compared them and essentially matched them to Rodney with a random match occurring only once in 100 billion. So that's considered a match and pretty much hard to match to anyone else in the world when there's roughly 7 billion in the world. In December 1977, Georgia Wixted was a young single woman. She was living alone and she was working as a nurse. The last anyone saw her was in the early morning hours when she gave her girlfriend, Barbara Gale, a ride home. Barbara expected Georgia at work the next day. When she failed to appear, police went to her apartment. They found her lying on the floor of her bedroom, dead on the floor. She had a nylon hose wrapped around her neck several times. It was so tightly knotted that a furrow was carved into the cartilage of her neck. That takes some serious force to do that. She died of strangulation and massive head injuries. Her skull had been bashed with a hammer that was lying nearby. Her face had also been hit and her genitals were mutilated. Georgia's purse contents were strewn around the bathroom, and there were evidence of forced entry. There were scuff marks along one of the windows. There was a box placed beneath it to assist entry. The cabinet drawers throughout the place were opened and their contents in disarray. A palm print was lifted from the bed's brass railing. Anal swabs were taken from Georgia. Upon DNA analysis of those swabs fluids, they matched Rodney with a random match occurring once in a trillion. Going back to that palm print that they took from the bed's brass railing, the palm print was later compared to Rodney's, and it was a match. In June of 1974, Charlotte Lamb was found brutally murdered in a laundry room of an apartment complex. She was nude and she had been strangled with a long shoelace from a sandal that she had been wearing. The shoelace was used as a garrote, so forcefully tightened that the cartilage around her voice box and thyroid were fractured. That, again, is a lot of force in order to fracture someone's voice box and thyroid. Her head and face had been beaten with a heavy piece of wood lying nearby. Her right breast was scraped, and there were lacerations over her eye and all of her genital area. Her ears were pierced, but she was not wearing any earrings at the time she was discovered. Now that's going to come into play a little later down the road. Swabs were taken from her vaginal area and were later compared to Rodney. The DNA found in the semen fluid swabs matched Rodney with a random match occurring once in 403 trillion persons. The last of the 4 Los Angeles murders was Jill Parenteau. A few days before Robin disappeared in June of 1979, Jill left work early to attend a baseball game. She failed to appear for work the next day, and police went to her apartment to check on her. Police discovered evidence of forced entry and her body on the floor of her bedroom. She was nude and had been beaten severely about the face and head. She had deep wounds of her vaginal and rectal areas and fingernail scratches on her breast. Jill had been strangled so brutally that there was a massive hemorrhage throughout the area of the thyroid, voice box, and epiglottis. Jill's girlfriend, Catherine Bryant, testified that she recognized Rodney. They had gone clubbing one evening and encountered him less than a month before the murder. They had seen and socialized with him at the club on more than one occasion. Swabs were taken from Jill's genitals and her mouth. Only the oral swab revealed any seminal fluid. The testing they did was serological characteristics of a contributor was to define them, and Rodney could not be excluded. The combination of serological factors was so rare that would only be present in 3.5% of the population. If it was 50% of the population, then it would be hard to say it was Rodney, but because these factors are rare and only present in 3.5% of the population, they could not exclude Rodney. So referring back to the storage locker in Seattle, one last test was done on other jewelry that were found in a cloth bag. There was an earring in the shape of a rose, and it was designed to be worn with pierced ears, so not one of those clip-on earrings. And it wasn't related to the gold ball earrings recognized by Robin's mother. So DNA testing was done on this rose earring, and fluids from Charlotte were still present on that earring, which was taken from her more than 20 years before they did that testing. There are 2 New York murders that Rodney recently pled guilty to, and by recent, roughly around 2010 to 2012. And he pled guilty to these 2 New York murders, Cornelia Crilly and Ellen Hover. And the judge sentenced Rodney to concurrent 25 years to life sentences, to 2 25 years to life sentences. And then he came back to California so he could further appeal his case. But he does have these, no matter what happens to these California cases, he does still have this 25 years life sentence for these New York murders. The Supreme Court of California decided on June 12, 2008, that it's going to reverse the judgment of the Court of Appeal. And so they said Orange County may proceed with a single trial of the 5 murder charges. And what the Court of Appeals, what they reversed, was severing those trials. So Supreme Court of California said, nope, single trial, you're going to do it. So why is he called the dating game killer? Well, in 1978, Rodney appeared on the dating game show. He was introduced as a successful photographer who got his start when his father found him in the darkroom at the age of 13, fully developed. Between takes, you might find him skydiving or motorcycling. A fellow contestant, because there was 3 of them in these little cubicles, a fellow contestant described him as a very strange guy with bizarre opinions. The Bachelorette was Charlotte Bradshaw, and out of the 3, she chose Rodney and met him backstage after the show. She refused to go out with him upon meeting him and found him creepy. After appearing on the dating game show, Rodney killed at least 3 women. There's speculation that rejection caused him to kill. So that's why he's called the dating game killer, because he went on the dating game, won, and then was rejected, and then killed at least 3 of these women. There is no set number of women that he has killed. They've said anywhere from 5 all the way up to 100 plus. But he has pled guilty to these New York murders, so 2 of them he has been convicted on. So where is Rodney Alcala now? He's been in prison since 1979 following the arrest for Robin's murder. He's been housed in San Quentin State Prison since June 25th, 1980. So June 25th, it'll be 40 years that he's been in state prison. According to the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, where you can see all 720 condemned inmates, the court action shows as reversed. So right now, California actually is not actively executing anyone. They haven't been doing that for years. Right now, there is kind of a court order in a way, if you want to call it a court order, that California cannot execute anyone until they fix the way they do lethal injection. However, other states like Texas, they're still executing people. But our current governor, Gavin Newsom, he wants to get rid of the death penalty. So that would put these 727 condemned inmates possibly have their sentence commuted to life without the possibility of parole. So it's still up in the air on what California will do, but they haven't executed anyone in years. So that was the dating game killer. That was Rodney Alcala. We're talking about California death row. So thank you for tuning in.